Welcome to the Learning Golang series. In today's video, I'll be going over some basics of Golang. We'll explain how modules work and how you can install and remove packages. I'll also be going over some of the data types that you get and a few other basic things. Before doing any of that, let's start by creating a simple script. I'm going to call this one main.go. You can call it whatever you want. Let's open this up in our editor. I'm using NeoVim, but you can use anything you like. So first I'm gonna write out a simple program. Then I'll explain what each line is doing. So on the first line, we are declaring a package main. It basically means that this package is going to be an executable. And when you have an executable package, you need to have this main function over here. You cannot work without it. This function will be executed when we start our program. And fmt is the package we are importing the println. So if we go back and run it, to run it you can simply do go run and main.go, and there you have it. So this is how you can make and run a script with Golang. But the biggest downside of creating scripts is that you cannot add packages to it. So if we try and do something like this, you'll get an error that go.mod file not found in the current directory. So I'll be going into package management just a bit later. So let's create a module. To create a new module, we just need to do go mod init and let's call it go tut. And now we have a module. So if you list the files, you'll see that we have a go.mod file. If you have worked with Node.js or maybe Python, then maybe you can understand what's it for. So first it defines the module name and then it defines the version that it's using. And if we add any packages, it will be reflected here. So if we go ahead and do go get and install this package, then you'll see that we have this line added to the file. And if we list the files again, we have this go.sum file. So if we look at the contents, then this lists down the exact version of the package that we are using. And if there are any dependencies needed for that package, it will be added here. So you added the package, now you've got to remove it. How can you do that? For that, you can just run go mod tidy. This command will remove all the unused packages that you have. So if we print this, you'll see that we have no packages here. Before doing anything else, let's take a look at how we can import functions from other files. So let's create a new file. I'm going to call this one math.go. If I open this up in Vim here, so any file that we add to this folder needs to have this package main. So let's create a new function. I'm going to call this one add, and this is going to take two numbers, a and b, and we're gonna use int for the types. If you have multiple variables of the same type, you can do something like this where you don't add types for each variables individually. So yeah, that's how you can do it. And we also need to define a return type. Again, it is going to be an int, and now we can simply return a plus b. And let's go back to the main file, and there if we now you don't need to explicitly import anything in the same package, you can simply use it. So if I add 5 and 7 and let's print sum, and if we run this, then we'll get 12, which is the sum. So it's as simple. You don't need to export anything or do anything else, but you might be getting this error that function add is unused. It's because we are not exporting it. And Golang has this very weird way of exporting functions or variables. So if you want to export something, you'll just have to capitalize it. So if I do that, it should work. And let's also fix that. And this is it. But it's not strictly required if you are in the same package. But it is nice because you won't be getting any warnings or errors. So in Golang, every folder is a different package. Let's create a folder called math. And I'm going to move the math.go file into the math folder. So if we go back to the main.go file, you'll see that we get an error. So in Golang, each folder is a separate package. So we just created a new folder called math, which has the math.go file. So we need to import that math package. So for that, first we need to add the module name, which is go.tut, and then math. And here we also need to do this. So I think we have a problem in our math.go file. We need to change this to the package name. So we're inside the math folder. So we're going to call this one package math. And now if we reload this, you can see that we have, and you can see that this is working. So let's go back to the terminal and run this. And this is it. It's working. So if you want to install a third-party package, you can just go to pkg.go.dev and there search for your package. I'm gonna go with this one. Let's copy this package URL and to install it, we just need to do go get and the URL. But before doing that, let's take a look at some of the data types that we have. So in Golang, we have a few primitive data types. The first one is int, and in int has a few variations. You can either use int 8, 16, 32 or 64 based on the size of the number that you want to represent. And by default, int represents an int 8. So it's basically the same thing. And for floating point numbers, we've got float 32 and float 64. Again, the more precision you want, you can pick the bigger one. And then we have strings and booleans. And you can also do type inference. If you don't want to manually assign the type for each variable, you can just use this walrus operator. I don't know what it's called in Golang lingo. So let's try and run this. So if we run it, you can see that we get the numbers that we have declared. And this is default in default string. So if we go back to the source file, you can see that we have these three variables int. So Go has this concept of zero values. So let's say if you declare a variable but don't provide a value or don't assign anything to it, it has an empty value or zero value. So in case of int, we get 0, and in case of a string, you get an empty string, and for booleans you get false. So let's go back. These are some of the data types that we have. We also have a few composite data types like arrays, slices, maps, and structs. I'm gonna go into more detail in a future video on these types like struct or slices, but to just sum it up, you can think of arrays as a list of numbers. The thing with arrays is that you have to set a size when you initialize it. So we've got 3 over here, so you cannot modify it at runtime. If you got 3 elements, you'll have 3 elements. And then we've got slices. Now you can think of a slice as a dynamic array. So you can push new items to the array whenever you want, and you can also remove them. Then we've also got maps. A map is just a hash map. It basically stores key value pairs. The first type that we pass here is the key type, and then we have the value type. And to change a value, you can also do something like this. And then we have structs. You can think of structs as a group of similar variables. So we have this thing here called person, which has a name and an age. So yeah, that's about it for this video. In the next video, we're gonna take a look at how you can do error handling. So thanks for watching.